Hello, and welcome to part 20 of our game making tutorial. It's been a while. I've been ill for about 2 weeks in a really unpleasant way, and I'm never ill for more than like a day, so it's been weird and terrible. But I'm basically in almost no pain now, and we were in the middle of redesigning a whole game, which is kind of an awkward time to take a break, so apologies to those who are following in real time. So we're going to finish that, well, who knows if we're going to finish it today, but we're going to continue with that today and hopefully get it to a more stable state. But before we do, there's the GameMaker guys have very generously given me 10 codes for the professional edition of GameMaker Studio. So the version we're using is the free one, and when you make a game with that, your game has to have the big splash screen at the start saying made with GameMaker, and there are various restrictions on certain advanced features you can't use, and I think certain platforms you can't export to. The professional edition is usually $100. I have 10 codes for it that I want to give to you guys, and I want to give them to... Basically, I just want to see what you're working on. So if you're making something other than just the basic example project that we've been working on, if you've branched off on your own and done something yourself, then I would love to see a video of it. If you can put something up on YouTube and link me to it. And then at some point, probably in the next 2 weeks, I'll pick the 10 sort of most promising or most interesting ones that people have made. And give you a key, so you can have the full version if you don't already have it. And that will hopefully be useful later on. So I'll put an email address in the description for this video for to send it to. Like, just send me a link to that, basically, so that we only select from people who actually need the professional version. And yeah, in 2 weeks' time I'll pick the best ones, and maybe, how will I show them to you? It would be good to show them off to you, but I don't want to have to do loads of video editing. Maybe I'll just link the sort of winners in the description or something once I do that. So today we are going to... The list of things we need to do today is huge. I'll show it to you. I've just done it all offline as a kind of practice run, and this is the list of all the things I did. That's a lot, and I have it there just in case I forget what I'm doing, because it's been so long since I started the practice run that I can't remember what the first things I did in it were. But basically our game, what we were trying to do is change it so that instead of just mowing down these two types of enemies that were different but not in any interesting way, I wanted to set up a kind of an ecosystem where you fire your glob gun at the red ones, and that attracts the green ones, and the green ones eat the red ones, and you can see the parts that were working there. Like, the green one goes towards the blue things, and he does eat them, and he gets bigger when he eats them, but he doesn't eat the actual enemies. And the point of him eating the enemies was the enemies were going to be like sort of TNT inside him, and then when you shot him with the other gun, that would be how you destroy the green guys. So the idea is these red guys would always be easily destroyable, like this. Not that easily destroyable, actually, but they only take one hit, and you can always kill them. And the challenge is, how do you kill the green guys? Because we're going to make the green guys invincible to bullets. Until they eat a red guy, and then once they've eaten a red guy, the red guy blowing up inside him when you shoot that is how you kill the green guys. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of a weird game, but it will be just a notch more interesting than what we have right now. What we have right now is kind of a shooter, and it doesn't really have anything other than shooting going on in it, and that would be okay if it was a fantastic shooter, but it's always going to be a bit basic because we're just rushing through this. This is, you know, how long has it been? Like 40-minute episodes, and about 20 of them. So 20 times 40 minutes is a very short development cycle for a game. It's extremely quick. So if we're not going to do something brilliantly polished, let's do something interesting. And something where enemies can eat each other and that has some effect on how you can attack them, that's interesting to me. So I think the first thing we should do, the problem we're having is that it's so easy to kill the red guys, and they destroy each other so readily that, and they also destroy the green guys when they blow up. So that's just the ultimate solution to everything, is shoot the red guys and just everything blows up and everything kills each other and the whole game's over. So let's make it so that they don't. So right now, what's causing that is that we have this little damage section here. This is below all the AI stuff and all the moving around stuff. And we say if we were hit by a projectile, which could be a bullet or a chunk of an enemy, then shake the screen, explode into a number of chunks, and play an explosion sound. This explode into a number of chunks function is something we use for a lot of different enemies, and the chunks we explode into are exploding enemy chunks, logically enough, And those, if we look at that, you can actually middle click even on the name of an object, and it'll open up the window for that object. And if you remember, we made the exploding enemy chunk a child of the O projectile object, which means that it is like a bullet. So it will itself cause other things to explode, which is satisfying, but it's way too easy. It just ends everything. So I'm going to keep that object, the exploding enemy chunk, this big, dangerous shard of flesh that destroys other things. We do want that. We're going to want that later. But I'm going to duplicate it. You just right-click on it, select duplicate. And then now we're just going to call this O Swarmer chunk. So this is just the more normal chunk of a swarmer. We still want to blow up in chunks that looks cool, but we don't want those chunks to actually destroy things. So the difference between this and the chunk we already have is going to be that instead of being a child of projectile, we're going to give it no parent, so it doesn't count as a projectile. It's not like a bullet, it won't hurt other things. And then, since it does behave differently, we should make it look a bit different too, and we could make them different colours or something, but I think the easiest thing to do is just say image x scale equals 0.2, 0.5, and image y scale equals image x scale. Make it the same in both dimensions. So, I guess we could have it fly out less dramatically too. The speed right now varies between 750 and 1500, so we could change that to be like just a little bit different. You'll never notice this really. So that right there should be a pretty significant change to how the game works. Oh yeah, shit. I forgot that. So I can still kill those things easily, but they don't kill each other. I guess I need more of them to actually experiment with that. If I shoot that one. No, he totally blows them up. Oh, we didn't tell them to actually explode into those things. Okay. There's going to be a lot of this. I've got a lot to get through, and I've done bits of it before, so I'm going to forget which bits I did in practice runs and which bits I did in this. So I'll change that to, instead of exploding enemy chunk, we're changing it to swarmer chunk. And in fact, 25 is a lot, so let's make it like 15. And I also recently discovered something wrong with our exploding to number chunks function. So that should work now, but if we middle click it, right here we say play the player death sound in the script itself. So everything that explodes into chunks plays the player death noise. We shouldn't do that. So I selected that and I cut it, and we're actually going to go into the player here, into a step event, and find the place where he dies. Where does the player die? Probably down the bottom. Yep, if an enemy is touching me, screen shake 80, explode into a number of chunks, and we'll say play the exploding sound there, because only the player should play the player death sound. Duh. And everything else, everything that calls the exploding function can play its own sound. Like when you call that function, you should also play the sound you want to play, because it's going to be different in each case. So let's make sure this works now. I discovered this because one of the other things I did in the practice run was like, I'm going to make it so that there's loads of swarmers, like really loads. And it got to the point where there were so many swarmers it's actually a little bit annoying. Because every time you die, you respawn where you died, and if you're surrounded by swarmers, then you respawn in the middle of a bunch of swarmers and often you die again, and that's frustrating. So I changed it so that the player, when he dies, just kills all swarmers in the world. And with like 600 of them on screen or something, that caused a bit of slowdown, which wasn't surprising, but actually I thought there's also like an audio problem there, and I realised all 600 of them were trying to play the same sound effect at the same time, which is not a good thing. I really like that little explosion actually. It still looks like it looks like they're bursting, but it feels a lot less dramatic, and actually I think you do notice that speed difference. Let me turn my volume up a little bit. The sound for the rapid fire gun doesn't sound correct. I'm going to check that this is... Oh yeah, we don't want this too high, do we, because it goes over my speech. Whoa, oh yeah, those guys get big. And right now when we shoot those guys they shrink, but we don't want that to happen. We're going to make them... Those are boomers. Swarmers and boomers are our two enemy types, and when we shoot those guys, there's loads of little things we need to change. So right now they shrink and create a power-up, and destroy us if we shrunk ourselves into oblivion. They can be destroyed. So we actually want none of that to happen. What we will do later is say we have a swarmer inside us explode. But we're not going to do that just yet, because we don't know how to eat swarmers yet. So that's one thing. There's something else I wanted to change in the short term. Yes, the globs, these little things we fire out. They can be detonated by shooting them, and we don't really want that. That's not the role this is going to play. This used to be a sort of petrol hose where you just spray down fuel and then ignite it, and it creates kind of like chain reaction explosions, and then possibly a flamethrower if you keep jetting it in. But we're going to be ripping stuff out today. This is like, we did loads of things that were kind of interesting and promising in their own way, and we could pursue those and make them their own game, but the thing I've decided to focus on is this kind of ecosystem thing, and lots of the things we did don't tie into that at all, and actually kind of take something away from it. So we're going to rip those things out. So here's, oh look, we labelled it explode when hit. That whole chunk is for exploding when hitting. Going to delete it. Oh, actually, while I'm at it, since we are ripping big chunks of our project out, and like I say, some of them are quite promising in their own way, I should talk about backing up your work, which is the thing you should be doing. With a little devs project, maybe it doesn't matter so much, but the way this is going to be one of these things, one of the many things where real programmers will be wincing or screaming at me, but the sort of proper way to back up your work when you're working on a game is version control, which is a sophisticated system of logging the changes you make to your project without losing the old versions, and lets you roll back to previous versions and even combine changes with other people who are working on your project separately, remotely, so that you're all working on the same project, and every time you have changes that are ready to be added to the project, they go into the cloud, and it can even even if you change the same thing, it can merge all the changes that are compatible and tell you about the ones that aren't. We're not going to use that. I don't use that for GameMaker. I tried it once. It does have a integration with, I think, one called Subversion, and I did all the setup for that, and I went through the process, and then I tested it, and the way I tested it was like, okay, send all my stuff to the cloud, back up the project, whatever, commit is what it's called, and then delete something from my local copy, and then try and restore it. And when I tried to restore it, the thing I deleted didn't come back, so I'm like, okay, stepping the fuck away from that and never using it again. It probably works fine if you use it right, but that's irrelevant. If I can't make it work 100% reliably, then I'm not fucking trusting my life to it. So here's how I do version control for heat signature. Here's our project. I create a new folder, and I say, give it a useful name, like before we fuck with things too much. And then I right-click, drag our project folder into there, and say copy here. And that just puts the entire folder, just everything, it just duplicates all of it, just makes it as a new folder in there. And then I've got that forever, and it can never be lost. And that's an incredibly space-inefficient way of doing it. It's hopeless for working in teams. There are lots of things that version control does that doesn't do, but that always fucking works. I've never lost work with that method, and that's not true of any other version control I've used, including GitHub and all this other stuff. So it doesn't matter. I really don't have an opinion on what you should use. Use anything that you can 100% rely on, but that's the only thing that matters. You have to be able to completely rely on it. So, we've made it so that our spray hose thing doesn't explode anymore. It's not a hugely important thing, but that's not part of our game now. Boomers already chase globs. Globs stick to swarmers, and then if a boomer eats the glob that's on a swarmer, which it can already do, it doesn't eat the swarmer. So what we want to do is, this is the code for the boomer. This is the thing it does every step. We did this fun little series of checks where we say, is there a glob? Is it near enough that I can smell it? Okay, but can I get there? Yes to all! Seek the glob! And then we seek the glob, and then this is actually like, but are we close enough to eat it? We are, hooray! Eat the glob! And then the first thing we do is destroy the glob. But actually, we want to check, is this glob attached to an enemy? If it is, we want to eat that enemy. And our glob code, we go into the glob code, when it hits something, if our glob doesn't already have a host, then it executes this code, this code looks for an enemy. Have we hit an enemy? Do we hit anyone at all? If we did hit someone, is it the type we can stick to, a swarmer? And if so, then make our host be the enemy that we hit. So, if a glob is attached to an enemy, it has a host. It has this host variable. We set that up. So, if we can get back to the boomer, when we eat a glob, we want to check if instance exists nearest glob dot host. Is it attached to a swarmer? And then we say, if the host exists, then we're going to eat that host. So nearest glob dot host dot, what should we call ourselves in relation to the thing we're eating? When we eat something, we want to tell it, hey you were eaten by me. So we're going to give it a variable called eater, I think. Your eater was me, and the word for me is ID. So that just says, if the glob, if it's attached to a swarmer, tell it we're the one who ate it. So the idea is these boomers eat the swarmers. The swarmers don't get destroyed by that process. They're inside the boomer, and they're going to want to move around with the boomer. And that's all we're going to do there for now. But this host, this eater variable, we need to set that up. We've referred to it here. We're setting it here, but we want to check things like what we want is for the swarmer, who is potentially being moved around by the thing that ate it, to check, do I have an eater? So first things first, when they're created, they don't have an eater. And created equals no one. And then here, in these states, we've got these two different AI states. We've got state idle and state alert. We want to check if host, we say instance exists host. If we have a host, sorry, not host, eater. That's why I picked a different word for this, so that we'd be clear about what we're talking about. If we have an eater, someone ate us, then let's say state equals eaten. Create a new state for that. That is a legitimately different state. Being eaten is a different state to being alert. And then only if we don't have this eater, then we check for line of sight of the player, and if we don't have that, then we switch to the idle state. So this is the same kind of code as what we already had, which is deciding whether to do something or whether to switch states, but it takes priority over this because we've been eaten. We don't want to bother with, we don't care whether we can see the player or not. We've got bigger problems. And then in this big else if for our state, we're going to say if state equals eaten. Let's set up what we do in this state, and I think we'll just say x equals, I keep writing host for some reason, move with the enemy that ate us. Once we've been eaten, we should move with our eater. And so this thing about, like, do we have an eater, and if so, switch to that state. We also want that check in the idle state. Doesn't matter whether we're idle or we're alert, we still care if we've been eaten. In both states we should be able to be eaten. So again, we say, do we have an eater? If we do, then change our state to eaten and don't do anything else. And only if we don't do we check whether we have line of sight to the player. So most of this should work. It's quite a complicated thing we're doing, so we're going to have to sort of iterate on it probably. But to recap, everything we said here is this swarmer, the little red guys, are always checking, did someone eat me? Do I have an eater? If someone ate me, then switch my state to eaten. And as soon as it does that, it stops doing all this looking for the player stuff and just moves along with the person who ate him. And all this stuff down here, right now it executes regardless of state. I think all of this stuff is probably going to be things that we only want to execute if we haven't been eaten yet, but we won't worry about that for now. So the swarmer is always listening, have I been eaten? It's trying to find out if I've been eaten, and it's the boomer that tells it, yes you have. It says, if I'm eating a glob, and the glob is attached to a swarmer, then tell the swarmer that its eater is me. Your eater is me, I've eaten you. So, That should work now, shouldn't it? Oh, one last thing we should do. We want to see it inside the boomer. This will be a good visual thing, and also just for testing purposes, it's good to see whether it really is inside and moving. So in the create event for the boomer, we're going to type image alpha equals 0.5. So alpha is how opaque you are, 0.5 means you're half transparent. Right, so they are transparent, that's good. And now we're going to put some glob on there. The glob fades out still. Oh, look at that! Perfect! It looks great too. He looks so surprised. And they're going to fight over it. Oh, the bigger one got it. So you can kind of see the second eye. It would be nice if they were all kind of like bouncing around inside him or something, but that's probably beyond the scope of our very basic implementation of this. There's a couple of things I don't like about the way this is working. One of which, actually there's lots of things I don't like. But one is that it's hard to get these guys to eat those things because the globs also push these guys back quite a lot. And also the globs fade over time. That does add gameplay in theory, but it's just a sort of arbitrary time limit that doesn't... There's no reason we want that to be challenging. It shouldn't be about a race against time for them to eat these guys. It's just frustrating to have to keep reapplying the bait until they reach it. So I think if the glob is attached to a thing, it shouldn't fade away. And I also think this rapid fireness is a problem because we're trying to just bait these guys, trying to just coat these guys in bait, but often we fire past them and we end up just feeding the monster directly. And that, again, it's sort of like it's a drawback that you have to work around, so technically you could call it gameplay, but I don't think it's fun. I think it's just annoying that we have an inaccurate weapon that keeps doing things we don't want it to do. So, let's change the glob. Close some of these windows. Here's the glob. So the first thing I said was we don't want it to fade if it's got a host. So here's the thing that says, do we have a host? If we're stuck to someone. And then this is all stuff that happens if we don't have a host. And here's the code that fades us out. So let's copy and paste, let's cut all of that. I'm going to put it inside this else part. This is the part that we haven't stuck to anyone yet. So it's there. All of this only executes if we haven't stuck to anyone. So only if we haven't stuck to anyone should we fade out at all. And in fact, I would say if we have... this isn't the neatest way to do this, but if we do have a host, let's make sure our image scale is big enough that you can see us. I suppose it doesn't really matter. Yeah, who cares? So this isn't strictly necessary, but I'm going to, for the time being, let's make sure we're big enough that we will appear behind the swarmer. We're also going to, I think we might make them transparent so that they can be on top of the swarmer and you can still see them. So now that should, yeah, it just stays there forever. That's great. And now when this guy eats it, he gets pretty big. I mean, that's a decent amount of size gain for eating an enemy, but actually he's not getting bigger because he ate the enemy, he's only getting bigger because he ate the swarmer thing. And all the swarmers inside him died just then. So we're applying a lot of these globs to everything, and he's eating a lot of them. So the other thing, we wanted to make it more accurate, so that's a property of the wave gun, it's the gun that fires them. And here's the bit where we say when we fire out a bullet from this gun, we should take the angle that we're looking in and add this random range between -5 and +5. Let's change that to -1 and +1. So that's a lot more accurate. Speed, you can keep the speed. But the other thing I'm going to change, again I'm going to do something quite drastic, I'm going to rip something out. We've got this inventory system where you can walk around and pick up weapons and they get added to your inventory, and when you right click, it cycles through the weapons you have. Right now there's only 2 in existence, so you'll only ever be toggling, if that. None of that is very intuitive. I mean, it's a good system if you're actually going to make a weapon system, if you're going to have like 6 different weapons and there's persistent progress between levels and stuff. And we were kind of working towards that. I don't think it really fits. We're going to, for our purposes, this game is going to be very simple. There's only going to be 2 weapons, and I want to focus on that. So I don't want the controls to be getting in the way of that. If you only have 2 weapons, there's no reason to have an inventory system. Just have left click the one weapon and right click the other weapon. So instead of here, this says, are we the currently selected weapon? And if so, then respond to the left mouse button. Going to delete that. Don't care if we're the selected weapon at all. And instead of looking for the left button, we're going to look at the right button. And I'm also going to, you know, it's rapid fire, and I'm saying that's a problem. We could put in a firing delay like we did with the single shotgun back when we had that. But actually, if we just want to make it to a more purposeful, slower firing, intentional thing, let's change the input to, instead of mouse check button is a thing that triggers every step while the button is held down. Mouse check button pressed fires once when the button goes down. So that really says, is it pressed now and it wasn't pressed last frame? Has it just been pressed? And only if it's just been pressed do we fire out a glob. And that means if you hold it down, you'll only fire one. You'll just fire one and then it'll stop until you release and then press again. So it's basically a semi-automatic thing where you could hammer the button and fire it really rapidly if you wanted to. We're not going to restrict that. But the natural way to use it will be to fire it one at a time, because you want it to be quite this... It's actually a strategic weapon. It's like you're going to intentionally bait that enemy to distract this guy so that he eats it, and then that achieves your objective in some way. So now, left click does nothing at all because I've got the wave gun selected, and the other gun still only responds if it's the selected weapon, so that doesn't do anything, and this gun only responds if you press right mouse button. So, I love the way they look at it, it's so cool. So now I fire one at a time, and if they hit, they stick. Yeah, so he should grow more when he eats an enemy, shouldn't he? He's only growing from the bait. So if I fire one out normally, it fades away. Still quite cool, it's quite a good distraction thing. Actually, I really like the knockback on this. When I was doing my practice run, I turned down the knockback. Oh my god. Because they were getting washed away in the streamer stuff, but actually this time I've done the single shot setting first, so that's not an issue. It doesn't matter that they get knocked back. Yeah, the guy was doing something very strange, wasn't he? He wasn't alert, but he was drifting away from me into a wall. I'm sure the code tells him not to do that. Anyway, so that's working pretty well. We're not far off. Let's make it so that the boomer grows when he eats an enemy. So here's the bit about eating globs, here's the bit about eating enemies, and here's the bit that says we should grow. And we say growth rate equals 0.1. Should we say you only grow if you eat an enemy? That would be quite reasonable, wouldn't it? Their size doesn't really have a big gameplay effect right now. It doesn't. We said that it would make them faster. I haven't done that yet. I don't know if I should. Do I care that much? Them being big is a little bit inconvenient. It means they're easier to bump into. So I'm just going to paste all of this growth code just into eating the swarmers. Because the other consideration is, like, should we be penalising you if you accidentally feed the boomer by firing in the wrong place or by shooting it out to distract him and then he eats the thing? I just think it's never going to add up to a significant amount of problems as like a significant downside, so there's no point in having it really. So growth rate was 0.1 when we're eating little blobs of glob. Blobs of glob, you might call them globs. And that's a small amount because we're going to eat lots of them. Now we're only going to, is only going to happen when we eat a whole enemy, so it should be more. Maybe 0.5? I mean, do they start out at 1 or less than 1? Because the maximum is 2, we say here. And I think that's about right. We start out at 0.5, so this will mean you eat 3 and you get to maximum size. Maybe we'll make it more like 3, 5. There's a certain amount of arbitrariness to that. But this should be fine. So now they only grow when they eat something, when they eat an enemy, and they grow by quite a lot. I'm actually surprised at how quickly we've got through this stuff. Got no explode. They don't drink if they have a host. Increase scale when attached, yeah, we did that. Boomers translucent. Boomers eat waterlogged swarmers. Explode if they're shot, that's the thing we haven't done. If they've got a swarmer inside them and you shoot a boomer, they should blow up. Make swarmers splat instead of explode, we did that. Mouse buttons and inventory switching, we should finish doing that, shouldn't we, because we're halfway through that. This gun's still called single shotgun. Can we change that? Or we could just call it rapid fire gun, right? So before I change it, I'm going to copy that word, go to scripts, search in scripts, and paste it in there. See if there are any mentions in the code. There are no mentions in the code. Nothing refers to this object at all. So we have wave gun. Let's also rename that if it's not referred to anywhere. Yep, not referred to anywhere, so we can freely rename that. We'll call it bait gun. So you have a bait gun and a rapid fire gun. Yes, whatever. Sorry, I want to edit the rapid fire gun, and what I want to do is take out this check for are we the selected item. We don't have a concept of selected item anymore, we don't care about any of that stuff, so don't worry about it. Let's maximize this. And adjust the indent to reflect that. And we still want it to be rapid fire like that, and we've still got that limiter for fire rate. So that is all good. And because these are just basic abilities, I'm not going to have them be things that you pick up. So let's make them invisible. So right now they're guns that lie on the floor. We don't want that. We're going to make them invisible so you never even see them. And then right now they're in the level. Let's take them out of the level. I'm going to click on them, and then you can do Alt-D to delete something. It was always very weird that the glob gun just looked like a glob. That was really bizarre, and it would have been worth doing a dummy sprite for that. In fact, since it's now... I'm not going to do that, it makes no sense. I was going to change the icon, but that's confusing because I just told you they're invisible now, so it doesn't make any difference. So now in the player create event, we're going to say, this is create X, Y, O, bait, oh no, not bait gun. Actually no, it doesn't matter at all. But let's do it in the logical order. Rapid fire gun, and same thing, bait gun. So whenever the player is created, it's going to create both his weapons on itself, on its X and Y coordinates, and they'll be immediately picked up. That code for picking them up isn't really necessary anymore. We could establish that connection in code here if we wanted to, but there's no point. That's extra work. It doesn't help us in any way. But the key difference here is that, firstly, you won't be walking around to pick them up in that first level, but also when you die and respawn, instead of them lying on the ground and then you picking them up as you reform, they will be, you'll never see them, and once your player is reassembled, that's when he'll give himself the weapons back. So it's just a sort of like a bypass to shortcut all that extra code that we put in. We could go through and take out that code if you were making a massive project and working in a big team and it was important for your code to all make sense and all be necessary, you would refactor that whole thing and you'd take out all of the old things and rewrite code to be shorter and cleaner. But it's important on the very small scale, on the sort of one-man team scale, to recognise when something is going to be a bunch of work that doesn't gain you anything. Makes the code like cleaner in theory, but how often are you really going to touch that code again? Probably not that much in a project of this size. So it adds work without really getting you anything, in my opinion. Loads and loads of times on Heat Signature, I've been looking at different ways to do something, and I've come up with like, oh, I could rework it in this way, and that would be probably feel smoother, and I could rework it in this way, and that might make it more extensible, these other things that I might want to add later. And then the third solution is, the thing I've already done is already done. So that's zero work. So that's often way more appealing. Okay, so I didn't have to pick up any weapons, I can already fire this rapid fire gun. I really like the feel of this now. We definitely took a page from Vlambeer, not just with the screen shake, but with the big bullets. It's the key thing that makes it feel a lot better. And also the inaccuracy makes it feel kind of wild and uncontrolled. So now, dude eats the thing and he gains a lot of size actually. We could even reduce that, I think. It's funny, the size is less noticeable each time. See, that red guy is appearing on top of the green guy, so our depths are not set correctly. It's kind of just guessing at which thing should appear in front of which thing. Ooh, is he going to get stuck on a wall? No, not yet. Oh yeah, so that doesn't work. I mean, they do successfully not die. But yeah, we're getting there. Let's fix that depth thing quickly, because that's an easy fix. We want... the thing that should appear on top of everything is the... I am going to change the icon for the bait gun, because it's just weird to have that be... Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. So now they both look like guns at least. Just so I can tell when I'm looking at this list I want the glob, and the glob looks like a glob. Do I want the glob? What am I doing? Forgotten. Depths. I think this one is going to be, right now it's minus 20, I'm going to change it to minus 10. I want the glob to be on top of the swarmer. I also want the boomer to be on top of the swarmer, so the boomer's depth will be 0. And the swarmer will be the lowest thing. Sorry, swarmer, here he is. And his depth will be 10. Remember that positive depth is deeper, it's further in the background. So, like, sometimes you want to give a big high number to something that's important, but actually the least important thing should have the highest numbers, or the furthest back things, whatever. Since we're going to be putting that blob sprite on top of the enemies, we should make it, right now it's a bright blue lump. We're going to open up and say, under images, there's a thing called opacity, and we can just tone that down so we can make it a bit fainter. So now it's going to be on top of the enemy, but we'll be able to see the enemy through it. And then we'll make the full boomers explode. So, oops, I forgot what I was firing. Yeah, there we go. It's really smooth and nice, isn't it? Like the way it kind of latches onto them and they recoil a bit. Ah, that looks great. That's all working way better than I thought it would. These guys are too slow, it's actually kind of boring for them to wait for them to pick those guys up. Fix that right now. We reduced their speed last time, so this is me just retreading my steps now. Or, no, what's the word? I don't know. Reversing my steps. We said 50, let's make it 100. Okay, that's their speed. When we set up collision, that's the speed value. So most important thing left to do is that when we shoot a boomer that has things in its stomach, it should explode. Now, lots of parts to this. Right now the boomer doesn't know whether he has anything. When he eats something, he tells it, I'm your eater, but he doesn't tell himself anything. He doesn't store any data about who he's eaten, how many things he's eaten. So the boomer doesn't know whether he's eaten anything at all. So I think when he eats something, this bit where it says, your eater is me, let's say things eaten equals things eaten plus 1. And that'll be a new variable that we initialize in the create event. Things eaten equals 0. And then lower down, it actually doesn't matter how many things we've eaten. It could even be a binary thing where we just say things eaten equals true. But to me, for some reason it's intuitive to count them, and we might want that data later. So here, where we said if hit by a projectile, if we have a swarmer inside us, explode. If things eaten greater than 0, then we want all the things inside us to blow up, but there's no easy way for me to do that from here. If I said, like, with swarmer instance destroy, that would destroy all the swarmers in the world. And so the only way for me to do it, for me to blow them up, would be every time I eat one, add it to an array, and then go through my array of things I've eaten and blow up each one individually. And that feels like over-engineering to me. Like, if I don't have to create a new array, I don't want to. So if I've eaten anything and someone shoots me, I get destroyed. Suddenly I've forgotten how I actually am going to do this. I want all the little swarmers to blow up if... Oh yeah, of course. So the question is, how do the swarmers tell when to blow up? Well, we could try and send them a message. We could say all of our little swarmers do this, but again we got the same problem. We don't know which ones we've eaten, which ones we haven't, and creating a system for keeping track of that is boring. But we're going to blow ourselves up, right? So if a swarmer has an eater, if it's been eaten, it knows who's eaten it, we keep track of that. If you're in the eaten state, right now we track the variables of the thing that ate us. If the thing that ate us has been destroyed, that can happen now, this would crash. So we want an instance exists check here anyway. If instance exists eater, then we do this. So we wouldn't want to follow the eater if we don't have one. And if we've come to the eaten state and our eater doesn't exist, we know our eater's been destroyed. We used to have one and now we don't. So I'll put that. Been destroyed. So let's call our favourite function. Explode into a number of chunks. And this is the... We modified this one earlier, didn't we, to be 15 chunks and swarm a chunk instead of exploding enemy chunk. But now, this is when we've been eaten by something, and this is the big payoff. This is when the player has successfully hit us with bait, lured a boomer to eat us, and then shot the boomer with a different gun to blow it up. So this is the big event. This is the thing we want to have massive consequences. So instead of the little swarmer chunks, we're going to do... let's see if it pops up. Exploding enemy chunk, which is the dangerous one. That's the one that actually hurts people. We could rename it to be clearer as to what the difference between those two is, but I don't care. And we're going to do 25 of them, so it's more spectacular, and that'll be happening for all of the ones they've eaten. So if they've eaten a lot, there'll be loads of things going out, and those things will still destroy the little swarmers, but it won't wipe them all out, because each individual swarmer, when it gets hit by a chunk, that's just a normal hit by projectile event, and we know that that just creates a small little blast now with no chain reaction. So, is that all we need? I think so. Once I've got the basics of this working, I want to make a few superficial changes to what the game kind of looks and feels like, because right now it's just a few random arbitrary enemies. Boy, that green guy really runs after them. It's good that they're fast, but now he's fucking miles away from any of the things I want him to eat. I can bait him though. I baited him in the wrong direction, I'm an idiot. Yeah, yeah, you see it? You can see it? Go on, eat it. And now... Yes! That was perfect! Yes! No noise that time for some reason. Oh look, they're both going for it. Which one will get it? Small one, yay! They're going to eat loads of them. And they should blow up each other, because remember the boomers thing is triggered by hit by projectile. Yeah! Chain reaction! And look, the one who hadn't eaten anything, he's the only one who survived. And they haven't eaten anything, they're basically invincible. Because they're transparent, they almost seem like ghosts, and maybe that's... Maybe the bullet should be going through them if they haven't eaten them. Oh, that's great. That actually feels really satisfying. Oh, I love the way they look at the thing. Okay, so that's awesome. And now I just want to change the level. So we're nearly done with the basics of this. It was a long list, but actually it didn't take as long as I thought. Let's turn this grid off. I'm just going to select all these things and delete them. I want the level to look very different to this. This level is... Why is it not working? Alright, the same shortcut doesn't work now. The room editor for GameMaker I don't like very much. I didn't like it for Gunpoint, and I like it even less than GameMaker Studio. I used GameMaker 8 for Gunpoint, and I mean a lot of things have changed are positive changes, but I still find it a pain in the ass to like scroll around. Like there's no scroll bars or anything, you have to use this minimap, and then if you're zoomed out, the minimap is wrong. Like it should be showing that being smaller than my frame, but it's not, and so how do I center now? I've got to move a frame that I can't see, and then that's very strange. Heat signature, I'm proud to say, has nothing in the room. There's a room, and it has a size, but there's literally not a single object in it. I don't place a single thing by hand. There's just the room startup code creates all of the objects in the galaxy. So, done that. I'm going to delete the swarmer, and I'm going to just move this guy around a bit, and maybe even put the player in the middle, now that we don't have to worry about dragging their weapons around as well. That is the game object, that little blue thing. That's just a necessary technicality. Let's give you like 6 boomers, and now I'll leave no objects in there at all for now, and in our game object that controls spawning, we're going to say seconds between enemy spawns, right now it's 1 second. We're going to make it 10 times the spawn rate, and we're going to say maximum swarmers equals 500. So that's a new variable. Since we're spawning 10 things a second, we don't want it to go like that forever. It's going to get overwhelming. That's okay, but it's going to get overwhelming for your computer. And making it literally infinite means that no matter how good a computer is, eventually you'll break it. I don't know what happens. I guess it probably just slows to a halt and then maybe crashes. Maybe there'll be a memory leak or something. I mean, a memory overload or whatever. I don't even know what you call it. So now in this event that does spawn enemies, it's only ever going to spawn swarmers. The boomers are pre-existing things that set up in the level, and it's your job to get rid of them all. Once you get rid of them all, we'll take you to the next level. I don't know if we'll do that today, but that will be the idea of the game, is you've got to get rid of all the swarmers. You can't hurt the swarmers directly, so you have to do this bait trick. And we don't want to spawn any more swarmers if the instance number of those swarmer is... We don't want to spawn them unless it's less than the maximum swarmers. So each time this reaches its tick, each time the timer runs out, we'll try and spawn one if there's not already too many. If there's already too many, it will do nothing this time, but it will still reset the clock, and next time we'll try again. So let's see what that's like. There's nothing in the level at all. That's not my actual plan. That's just for testing, really. So we've got these fast swarmers, sorry, boomers, that we can't do anything for. Oh my god. Oh, they creep in. Oh my god. Oh, they're fucking terrifying. And I can shoot them all day, but they don't cause chain reactions, so I'm never going to get rid of all of them. And my kick is always pushing me towards other enemies, so it's kind of scary. So what I want to be doing is baiting these other... Oh my god. There we go. Oh, it's really satisfying when there's a big crowd of them. Oh god, the way they move is so fucking creepy. And so getting a bunch of them to do a chain reaction is really... Oh god, I just fed into it. Have I killed them all? Because if so, I'm in trouble. So this is the annoying thing, is when you die. It's not too bad right now, but look, we don't kill enough of them, so now I'm probably stuck in a death loop. So we want to fix that. A couple other things I don't like about this. One is the level is so much bigger than the screen that it's just kind of annoying. So I'm just going to make that 1200 and 900. Is that? That's my screen. 1400 by... Okay, maybe more like 700. And let's move these guys in. Might be too many actually, maybe I'll delete those. This is level 1, so it doesn't make it too challenging. 5 will be alright. And move the player to the middle. These guys around the edge. So that was one thing. What were the other things? One was when you die, when the player dies, let's also... We're going to explode into a number of chunks, but before we do that, let's say with those swarmer, explode into a number of chunks. Not chunks of the player, that would be absolutely mad, but instead, let's actually make it just like 3, 5. Oh, swarmer chunk. So they'll all die now. And that'll be kind of like a big reset. We're dead, they're dead. It might seem weird to like reward the player with when they die by killing all the enemies, but actually killing all the swarmers isn't a reward. You're not trying to kill the swarmers. Killing them does nothing. All we're doing is kind of resetting it. In fact, they're your tools for killing the green things, so it kind of sets you back a little bit. So smaller room, that feels good. Should be no scrolling at all. Whoa, and then when I die, everything dies. Did we see any bits come out? Oh yeah. Didn't notice it at first. This is feeling a lot slicker now. It's just a lot more streamlined. There are less elements to it. But it's much more focused on this one weird mechanic. This one weird trick. Oh look, you can put a bait on it and then shoot the enemy out from underneath it and the bait stays. It's fucking terrifying. So, I want to get rid of this green bar, that's not doing anything anymore. I'll delete that. We will eventually make it so that when once all the green things are dead, we move on to the next level. Maybe there could be some hard element for that, I don't know. But that doesn't feel like a job for today. The job for today would be, oh god, this is really satisfying. I just want to put a few obstacles in the level. So we've got this solid thing. Let's just resize that to 3 times its current size. And we could make it more visually interesting, but that doesn't sound like me, does it? Oh god, why am I testing it? I didn't want to test it. I meant to edit the run. You can actually kind of edit the game while it's launching, which feels like playing with fire. I don't know if there are any negative consequences to doing that. Here's the room. We're going to place some big blocks just to give it a bit of geometry, just so that these, when those things swarm you, they're kind of at least filtering in around something. I don't care how the level's designed. And then, what is it that displays the thing on the screen? Is it the player? Does it have a draw GUI or anything? Sorry, I just read that comment. I don't remember writing that. Draw our sprite normally, but facing our facing direction, without changing image angle, so as not to affect occlusion. What? This makes sense. I'm not on trial here. There's actually something else I want to do here, which is we have sprite index. What is our sprite index if not S-player? S-player lower body. Oh god. I actually don't like the lower body thing. I'm going to get rid of it. So we're not going to draw lower body at all. Just going to delete that. And now, is it the menu that draws the HUD thing? That would kind of make sense. It already has the draw GUI thing. Oh yeah, if instance exists player, draw this bar thing. Let's delete that entire thing without reading it, really, and see what happened to our game. I have no sense of time at all. I don't know if this has been a long one or a short one. I feel like I've made loads of changes very quickly, because it took me a lot longer in practice. I still don't hear that gun when it fires. Weird. Not even sure it's better with those blocks. But that HUD bar is gone. And our player looks way better without that stupid tail thing. I think having a tail is a good idea. I just drew it so badly that it kind of looked irritating. It looked like a weird flat. Oh god, come here, green man! Oh, you couldn't just save me. It's fine, the death still feels like failure, even though it doesn't do you any harm, really. Like I say, I just researched the progress a little bit. So the next two things would be make it so that when you kill all the green enemies you finish the level, but also that the more enemies, maybe it could be something like the more red things are killed in a 1 second period, the higher your total score. Like you get a kind of high score for the best single kill you did. Because what I want to incentivize is you loading up those green guys with a bunch of red guys and then blowing them up. There are no green guys left here, so this is a losing battle. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there. So again, if you're working on your own project, it doesn't matter if it can start with this and be modified from this. It doesn't matter if you've used other resources, other tutorials. Preferably it's something that you started whilst following along with this project, or afterwards. And obviously it has to be in GameMaker Studio. Yeah, show it to me in a YouTube video and I will give a professional edition of GameMaker, courtesy of Yo-Yo Games, to the best ones to help you make it into something cool. So thanks a lot. How the hell do I end this thing? It's been so long I can't remember how to stop recording.